We looking good? Are we looking good?
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're beautiful.
Cool. Excellent. I thought we looked beautiful. Which one? Which one? Both of us, or like maybe is it maybe just
this guy?
Is it maybe just
the hair?
Is it?
Are we recording right now? Are you going to use this sort of little intro thing?
It may be. I don't know.
Born free as the wind blows.
Hey guys, welcome back to officially named the Nameless Fighting Game Show by you guys out there. We left it too late and you all went for it, and I'm not sure if you're punishing us or if that is genuinely the name that you love, but it is now called the Nameless Fighting Game Show. We have our first guest right here. This is Javits.
What's up, guys?
The mad scientist, Mr. Street Fighter scientist. And of course we have Velociraptor, as always, my co-host on this show. And today we're going to talk about damage in Street Fighter 5, because that's a hot topic at the moment, based on a video which I'm going to insert right now.
まあ好きなレバー使うのがいいと思います。なんかパンテラもファームが新しくなったみたいで、やるとなかなかよろしくなるようです。もうね、バイソン戦は相手が下がってくるというか、まあ、岩田さんは下がってくるんで、前に押すだけなんですよ、これは。ただ、その前に来られるとね、ちょっと困るんですよね。よし、ここで入れ替える。投げる。投げ重ねにします。よし、これは無理か。おおあー、これ EX 波動使わなくていい。打つ。3秒前ぐらいに分かったな、今。うわー、ごめんなさい。よし、これはね、もう集計くれるんですよ、誰ですよ。よし。よし、これしょうがない。減ってない、減ってない。減ってないよ。おい、受け身取ってないよ。うわー、これ死んだ。いやー、これ25増えてても死んでる。
So the video was, of course, Tokido, and it was on Twitter, and it went kind of viral, and it showed him, you know, working hard against the Balrog, who then appeared to destroy him in about 12 to 13 seconds with his V trigger and I guess one guess after that. So first question for everybody out there is in the comments. Please leave it in the comments. Damage. Do you think there's too much damage in this game? Do you think it's too easy to inflict damage in this game? Do you think rounds are over too quickly? Do you think it's too lopsided? I just want your point of view on damage in this game. Let us know in the comments. We're going to talk about it right now. So I want to start, before we get to Javits, you know, because I think Javits took a step back and wanted to have a more scientific look at it. John, you, like, I guess, tell us about, like, robbery characters, what robbery characters are, and why this video resonated with people so much at the moment, and your perspective on it.
Yeah, so this video got a lot of attention very quickly for a few things. People have been wanting to say that damage is too high in Street Fighter 5 in general, and they've wanted to say that you don't have to work for that damage too hard. And it was a perfect setting. It was Tokido, one of the, you know, undisputed, strongest players in the world, very smart, working for an entire round to almost KO this Balrog player. And then one jump in and one reset, or not one reset, one mix up on wake up, and everything Tokido did went out the window and he lost the round. And it might not be that every character in this game does too much damage, and this is the community kind of thought process I'm trying to get at right now. It might not be that every character does too much, but there are at least three that come to mind. And as you said, the robbery characters, and those would be Balrog, of course, and then Urien and Laura. Those three characters, you can kind of wail on them all round long, and then if they get to their V trigger, which of course you build from getting hit, they pop that thing, and then it gives them the ability to turn the entire round around, and it can often result in a pretty demoralizing loss for everybody else. So people were primed and ready to go in on this, but I generally agree, but with a few asterisks.
So let me just interject there, because before this video, a while ago, you had sort of posted an article on Event Hubs. You're one of the first people to sort of say, I mean, tell me about the article, because you talked about maybe damage was a bit high anyway. Is that still your feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt this was maybe, I think it was early February, when we knew there was a patch coming, but we didn't know what was coming down the pike in terms of the exact details of it. And the focus was mainly on Urian, but also, I guess, on the robbery characters in general. And the idea was, if I were Capcom, how would I change this game so that I don't take away from the essence of Street Fighter V, don't take away from its identity as it's developed into what it is today, but kind of combat against this, against these robbery characters that are making the game not fun. And my answer to that was not necessarily to change their kind of ridiculous 50-50 mix-ups that they put you in, but to reduce stun and reduce the damage output during these, so that you would have more than one or two chances to get out of this, one or two chances to begin to understand what your opponent wants to do, begin to understand their tendencies, and that would give me a more competitive, just kind of a competitive approach to things, as opposed to, well, Urian popped his V-trigger, now I have to try to get out of it. If I guess wrong once, I'm next to stun. If I guess wrong twice, I'm dead. And to me, that just didn't feel competitive. So I felt like if the damage output and the stun output was lower, I would have more opportunities to read what my opponent was doing. So that was the general gist of that. That's how I would have changed the game if I were Capcom.
So I think, so what's interesting is I think there seems to be like this general consensus that there's definitely like these kind of robbery characters, right? Now, I guess what I want to ask you, Javits, so you saw the video and you kind of took a step back, a more scientific look at it, and started to play around with other characters and see if they could do the same amount of damage and so on and so on. So, how many characters can do this in the game? Like, I mean, it feels like there's like maybe like 3 or 4 characters, right? So feel like these so-called robbery characters, and I don't know whether that's just based on ease. I feel like it's just based on ease.
Well, it depends on when certain characters that land a successful hit and leads to a knockdown. Sometimes that knockdown puts you in a situation where it's a very hard guess, and if you guess wrong, you're either stunned, as Velociraptor said, or you're probably dead. So, in that respect, yes, it would be good to reduce the damage to maybe give you that one more opportunity, so that it doesn't just feel like one turn leads to the end of the game. But at the same time, I think we have to look at this game for what it is and start to accept that this is the vision that they wanted for this game. They wanted it to be in your face, like, very risky, very explosive, So we're seeing it manifest, and I think a lot of people are looking at it from the perspective of like other games, like, oh well, like comparing it to, let's say, Street Fighter 4, where you had so many defensive options, like you had crouch text, you had focus backdash, you had like all these different ways that could kind of keep you relatively safe.
Yeah.
Whereas in Street Fighter 5, you don't have all those options. Like your backdash is crush counterable. You don't. You can't focus. Your throw tech is counter hittable. It's a lot of different things that lead to that feeling of like, oh, the damage is so high. So I don't think by the numbers the damage itself is too high.
Well, you've actually done tests, right? So you've actually run tests which say that with similar resources you can do the same amount of damage with Street Fighter 4.
Right. So that's what I find interesting about it. That if you compare, let's say, characters that are in both games, like someone like a Ryu or a Balrog, with the same resources versus characters with, let's say, a base health of 1,000, in Street Fighter 4 you definitely can do more damage, but the ease of getting that damage is more difficult in Street Fighter 4 because there's more execution. The links are harder to execute. There's FADCs involved. It's just like less opportunities to get that damage because there's more escapes and the combos themselves are harder. So it's a question of, did they succeed? Did Capcom succeed in their goal of making the game easier, and this is just the result, and we're just all so shocked by it? So that's what you kind of have to weigh. Like, this was their goal, and it succeeded, and now everyone's shocked. So it's kind of a situation where you have to ask: is it the damage that needs to go down, or the escape options that need to get better? Personally, I would only like it as a slight damage reduction, only because once you start learning the game, you can start mitigating those defensive options and knowing what's the best one to choose for, and it kind of helps you survive longer. It's not like that video with Akuma, Tokido the Akuma versus the Balrog. Every round doesn't go like that. It's just that when those few times that it does happen, it feels terrible because you feel like, oh my god, I worked so hard,
right?
And then it all slipped away. But if you really analyze that video, you know, Tokido, he's a great player, but he also didn't play perfect. You know, before that even happened,
yeah, he panicked. I know. Something happened, and he panicked, and then it threw him off.
So like moments like that is what people need to take into account. You need to look at the big picture. You know, that big damage situation was avoidable had Tokido finished his combo when he stunned the Balrog player. He would have killed him, and then we might have been complaining, oh, Akuma's damage is too high because he was rushing down Balrog, and Balrog was about to get stunned in the next hit. And, you know, he actually stunned him, and then he didn't do his killing combo. So it's like, who's to blame there? Is it Tokido, or is it the Balrog player that got his easy jumping combo? Now, another thing to consider is, granted, I do think that Balrog does a lot of damage. But in that particular situation, he did a jumping combo on the lowest health character in the game with max resources, and that lowest health character in the game was not at full health. So, I don't know, a lot of people saw that I did a combo challenge. It was inspired by that video. Now, the purpose of that combo challenge that I did wasn't necessarily to downplay Balrog's damage, but it was kind of more to open up people's eyes and see, like, hey, you know, under similar circumstances, a lot of characters, probably about more than half the cast, can do similar damage and also kill Akuma. So it's not a Balrog-specific problem. This is a situation that a lot of characters can do this, where they get a big damage combo, and then the next opening is like a kill combo or a kill mix-up, whatever. So people need to weigh those things. It's not, you know, there are robbery characters that obviously there are. Like, you know, they can do those mix-ups easier than some others can, but other characters can do this too. So they need to look at, you know, maybe like making some things less safe, and I feel like they're going in that direction with the patch that's coming soon.
You think so? I mean, because Balrog, I mean, we'll talk about patch later, but Balrog himself, did he even have any changes other than health?
They didn't mention anything other than health.
Right, so I don't know if that's totally true, but and we might have to wait another year.
Right.
And in a year's time, you never know with this game, because people like learn new tech and what have you, right? So you got to give it time. It's just interesting to me. I think the conversation is, there's a conversation about damage, right? Which is shit. Like, these rounds can be over in seconds, right? If I make one mistake, and I guess you have to decide whether you're okay with that, because if you're not okay with that, then we either start playing 3 out of 5, like some people have been campaigning for, because they think it's a bit random. A lot of the players have been saying to me in interviews, like, they feel the pressure a lot more in pools because they feel like it's a little bit more random. Like they can get caught off guard by somebody. Like you say, they have less chances. Like, they have one guess, perhaps, you know, when somebody's got their full V trigger.
That's I think where it like kind of comes together for me. In Street Fighter V, like when I've played it for hours and hours now, and I've experienced all these different matchups and whatnot. And when I feel like the player that I'm playing against is not actively thinking about how to approach me because of my tendencies and because of what I've shown them thus far in the rounds that we've played, and rather they are able to, if they're playing Urine, they can do an EX shoulder tackle and cancel that into V trigger, which is safe. And I know that's coming, and I've been looking at their tendencies, and I still have an exceptionally hard time stopping that. They can do that, and then I'm in this situation where I have one guess, and it's often not in my favor because they're at advantage because of like the plus range of the V trigger cancel. And if I do that one guess wrong, then I lose. And the player that's doing it, like, because the game's execution is so much lower than what we're all used to, you know, off of other games like Street Fighter 4 and such, they can just do this. It feels like, to me, it takes the competitive aspect out of it. And it's like, you get hit until you have V-trigger, and then you just dial in your most awesome V-trigger sequence. And if you're, you know, like Laura, you're just going to be spamming medium kick, and then if one of them hits, well, pop that V-trigger and go into your crazy vortex, where I have to guess. If you're Urian, do the shoulder tackle into the Aegis reflector. Or if you're Balrog, you know, do like the target combo, cancel it to make it safe, and then I have to hold these, you know, these throw versus low versus overhead mix-ups, and if one of them touches me, then I'm into the corner, and one more touch is gonna kill me. And it's like, anyone can do that. And even if I know it's coming, it's very difficult to stop. And I go, you know, it is possible to stop these things, sure, and it is possible to escape them, but it seems like maybe like 40% of the time, these players that just learn these simple sequences with low execution are going to just do this thing, and yeah, maybe you drown in pools, even though the player that's put a lot more time into it and has been thinking more actively about the game, you know, that player is going to lose. And like, there are games that kind of flow that way, but Street Fighter has not really been a game like that. Street Fighter's been more about that mental chess match. And expectations are such that, like, maybe if this were a Marvel game, things would be different because expectations of the franchise have been different. You know, Marvel's in a lot of ways just a one-touch and you're dead game. But Street Fighter, not so much. And so I think that's a big reason as to why people are not all that happy with the way things are going right now with 5.
Okay. So, currently, it feels so. There's this aspect of damage, and the other aspect is ease of damage, right? So it feels for at least 4 people. The characters that are called the robbery characters, right? So you've got, like, I guess you've got Balrog, Laura, Urian, and then you had said that you felt like Ibuki was.
Ibuki's has crept up into that little team of
robbery. She requires a few more hits, though. She's got ridiculous mix-ups, and you can't even see what's going on because of the bomb explosion and stuff like that. Yeah, but she has to hit you, I think, at least once or twice more, so you see, like, more interactions happening. Therefore, I feel like Ibuki's perfect in that respect. Like, she's hard to block, but you have a few chances to block her.
Right. So, again, that's easy, and that's partly to do with the ease. Like, Balrog looks very simple and very easy. Like, when you see it on, like, visually, it looks very simple and very easy. And visually, I was talking to you about this, it actually looks kind of like, in your head, it kind of looks brutal because he's big and he's like Mike Tyson, and he just takes you from one side of the screen. Yeah, he takes you from one side of the screen to the other, and he can execute his full V trigger in like, is it his full V trigger in one move? I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't feel like with Akuma, when Tokido pops like Akuma's V trigger, he'll usually hit like it depends where he's at, but like it really depends when he pops it, but often he'll just get a DP out of it, and then he has to try and find like a reset, which is usually much harder for Akuma to do.
It's a risk versus reward thing. It's a lot of risk and it's a lot of thought.
So although Akuma, I think Akuma's, and when I spoke to Tokido, we both felt like Tokuda's. What am I talking about?
They just fused into one.
Just
Tokido and Akuma.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was definitely of the opinion that that some of these characters is just a little bit too easy for them. Like, and I tweeted about that, and a few other people had sort of said, "Yeah, oh god, like just anybody can do this online," you know. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a Balrog player. I'm not a Laura player, and I'm not a Urian player. I think they're kind of interesting characters and interesting to watch. And I guess like at the highest level, I don't know. We saw PR Balrog yesterday in ELeague go 6-1, but then I wouldn't kind of expect PR Balrog to do that on but like when he's in a show like ELeague, he's just like that kind of guy. So I don't know if that means anything.
Yeah.
Well, we're watching Gootecks not get a game so far today.
With Yuri,
you know, he's using Yuri, yeah. So
and his hitbox. So he's up to something else. I think he's trying to sell jackets because he's a businessman. And I think he makes a better headline for. I'm not even kidding. I think he's that smart. I think it makes a better headline for 0-7. So he's made himself a meme and all that sort of stuff. But that's a whole other story. So let's finish this out because this is an ongoing thing, and I'm going to be really excited to read some of the comments. But I guess like for each of us, I just want to know like where would you go from here? I can start, and I would say that I would probably go with a little bit of a damage reduction and make it a little bit harder for some of those so-called robbery characters to do what they do. But I am the least knowledgeable of the three of us. So I want to know, like, where would you go from here if you were producer? Like, let's go with you, John, and then we'll come back to Javits and you can finish it out.
Okay.
Where would you go from here if you were the producer of Street Fighter 5?
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of the cast is good where it's at. I think characters like Ibuki, like we talked about, she's got crazy stuff, it's flashy, but she has to hit you a few times. Nikali, if he goes into a V-trigger, he can really snowball you, but it's not to the point where you feel completely helpless, and he's got to hit you a few times. I think that there are just a few sore thumbs that are sticking out right now, and it's those robbery characters that we were talking about, and I think just making those characters, forcing those characters to have more interactions, more times where the combo is reset or the situation is reset, and you have to, even if you're at disadvantage against them, you have to guess. And having more of those per round, I would feel like, okay, maybe it wasn't in my favor, but I had 3 or 4 guesses I was able to at least attempt. And if I lost on all 4 of those, okay, they beat me. They rock, paper, scissors me out, and that was it. But bottom line, I would just make more interactions for those characters. And I think once you bring those guys down a little bit, that makes the bottom tiers look a little bit better because they're not just getting demolished by the top tiers. And I think that the mid-tier and the core of Street Fighter V is pretty close to being what it needs to be if it's not already there. Again, it's just these couple of guys that are giving everything kind of a bad name. So more interactions, less or fewer one-time guesses to round around.
Totally get it. Javits?
From my point of view, I don't think the damage so much is the big problem, but something that John touched on earlier is I think the way that those situations start sometimes is a little bit too easy. So what I would change is a lot of the way they get their mix-up started is like some guessed button cancel into V-trigger, and then whether it's on hit or block, it's a very advantageous situation for those characters because you now have to guess. So it creates this feeling like even if I'm playing cautious and blocking what could potentially be a lot of damage, I'm still in a poor situation. So what I would do is nerf the frame advantage on particular moves that are canceled into V-trigger. So like let's say Laura's stand medium kick. Instead of it being like plus, I don't know, I think it's like +6 if you cancel into V-trigger, make it like +1 or something where she doesn't get like some crazy mix-up. Something where if you successfully block it, you can skillfully get away from the mix-up.
Mm-hmm.
So I would kind of go more that direction. And I saw some, like, they're kind of doing that with some moves, like Urian's tackle is going from 0 on block to -2 on block with less pushback. So that kind of gives you the feeling like, okay, if I successfully block this move, now it's my turn and I have an advantageous situation. Whereas, like, they might have to think about throwing this move out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't fix the V-trigger aspect. You can still cancel the V-trigger and they still get a mix-up. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of shows that they're thinking about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And, but for us, we also have to think, like, we have to start accepting to a degree that this is the game. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you have to accept bad things, but the more you start to accept that this is what the vision that they had in mind for the game, and you start to notice that with some of the stuff that they leave in, like for example with Balrog, he didn't really change much. Cammy got buffed. Like they lowered his health, they lowered their health, but they still want these characters that playstyle to remain intact. So I think the more we start to accept like this is how the game is, and try to find how to play within that rule set, you start to kind of change your mindset, and you start thinking more positively about how can I make these situations work in my favor.
Or you just main Urian and you're good.
Or you could do that, but you might go 0-7. You know, you never know.
Oh, you might go 0-7. Well, we don't know. We don't know.
We don't know yet.
Has he
shout out to Gootecks.
I don't know.
He's a good player. But,
we're watching it now. I think
having a rough day.
I think he may have just gone 0-7. I'm not sure.
Well, he's winning. He's winning in a different way, and it's much more important. I think.
No, I know. I think he's a genius. Oh, 0-6 right now.
Well, I do want to say though, really quick to all of that I agree. I think Street Fighter V. Capcom has an obvious direction they've wanted to go with it. With a lot of the choices they've made, some of it's obvious. Some of it I still don't understand. But regardless, it has an identity as a fighting game, and that's another reason why I would only touch Damage and Sun for the most part, because then we wouldn't have to be learning how to play a new game. We wouldn't have to learn how to handle certain situations because frame data or hitboxes have changed. It's just strictly like, okay, I know what's going on. I know what's coming. It completely comes down to my interaction with the other person that I'm playing, and that's where I think the focus should be. So, I mean, if they change frame data, if they add moves and crazy stuff like that, then you could potentially be opening up a whole other can of worms. But if you just bring down damage and stuff, that just ensures that you're going to have more interactions.
All right, so let me ask this one last question of you guys. Given the situation that we're in, and we've got some foresight or into what's coming in the 2.1 patch, I guess. Doesn't seem like, for instance, let's say Balrog is going to change much. Given that we know what we know, do you think we should be moving to a 3 out of 5 format for everything? Like, I'll go with you first, John. In tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we can't have more drawn-out rounds, then the next best thing is longer sets, because I need to be able to download my opponent one way or another. And so if I can't get more time in a single round, which I think would be ideal, then I at least want to do a 3 out of 5 set. And the game goes pretty fast. I mean, we've seen perfects where it's only like 18 game seconds in, and we've seen like the robbery characters and whatnot just steal rounds away really quickly. So I don't think that a 3 out of 5 format would be too detrimental to the tournament scene. I run any tournaments that I do here in Arizona, just locals and stuff. I run those all 3 out of 5. And so yeah, I very much advocate that. I'm very much an advocate of that.
Okay, Javits?
I kind of like the current format,
Yeah.
but given the volatile nature of this game, I think if they wanted to add maybe 3 out of 5 to like to the finals of pools matches, that I could, because right now, like if you're in a pool in a big tournament, it's still 2 out of 3. It doesn't become 3 out of 5 until you're, I think, top 8. So
yeah.
I think if they started doing 3 out of 5 for winners and losers finals of a pool, that would kind of give you like, all right, if I make it to that point, I earned the right to get an extra round to download someone. But logistically, with these big tournaments, and not every round is 10-second round. That's not the full scope of this game. It's just that certain matchups and certain characters can do that. But that doesn't mean that the entire game is like that. So I don't think it's a good idea to kind of shift the whole, 2 out of 3 to 3 out of 5 thing for a Street Fighter. I don't think it's necessary. But if I wanted to have a middle ground, I would add that 3 out of 5 for winners finals and losers finals of pools.
And it's not. I mean, do you feel? I guess I'm going to tack on one last question. There are plenty of fighting games where. Third Strike is probably an example, where they figured out that Gouki the Cat is being really annoying right now. He loves Javits, and he's being super loud and annoying. I mean, there are definitely games that exist and have been extremely successful where the cast is very lopsided, or at least feels very lopsided.
Right.
And there are people who decide, okay, well, I'm going to be the expert with Q or whatever, right? That is actually motivates me to play. This game, do you guys feel like this game, as it is at the moment, is where do you feel it's at? Do you feel like, oh yeah, it's crazy lopsided, or do you feel like, nah, it's not that bad, but there are a few characters that are too much? Or actually, I want to ask you first, Javits.
I don't think currently the game is as lopsided as some of the older games. It's not any different. It's not any, I don't think it's any better or worse. I think that's something that's in every fighting game where you have you have a group of strong characters, your mid tiers and your low tiers.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's like this game feels that different in that regard, but I do think though that with some of the older games, being that there's different execution barriers at higher levels.
Right.
If you spend the time mastering a character, even a low tier, you can kind of express yourself a little more, like certain little tricks like that kind of set you apart. Like, let's say you use Q in Third Strike. He's a low tier character, but if you're someone like Kuroda, who has like all these crazy low parry option selects that avoid throws and little tricks that kind of set you apart and that let you compete even at higher levels, I think that's what this game lacks. Since the execution is so low, it's like everybody can do. There's not that much different.
There's not an opportunity to be as creative as you would like, at least as far as we know right now.
Right. So to simplify this, that's always an issue with tiers in every game, but you know, with execution barriers help you bring like low tier here and top tier. It kind of evens it out. But with Street Fighter V, since execution is not the issue, everybody can execute in this game. It becomes more apparent, like, okay, this character just can't hang with this one. Doesn't matter if my execution is bad or not. So I think if they added more systems in the game that kind of let you set yourself apart with your execution or some sort of new ability that you have to work for, I think that might be a good solution to that issue.
And you know what also might help is the release of all the rest of the characters this year, which I'm hoping is like another, 3 DLC, and then I'm hoping I hope they have some surprises for us, like Sagat or someone like that. John, do you feel like this game is currently like completely lopsided, or do you think that it's not that bad?
I think that if you look at older fighting games, the spectrum from the bottom tier to the top tier is huge, and that was okay because that was fighting games. And I think in Street Fighter, especially back in Season 1, I felt that the distance between the lowest tier character and the highest tier character wasn't that huge. But like Javits put pretty well, the significance of the individual gaps between characters becomes more apparent because it's not like they don't have anything special. Like there's no chance for Fang's down here, but sometimes he's like way up here. If you have like the right kind of tech and the right kind of approach and everything, characters are much more kind of cut and dry. So I do think for Street Fighter V, it's not as spread out as a lot of other fighting games, but it's in some ways even more significant to be polarized on one side or the other. So I mean, I guess that kind of takes us back to same idea as older fighting games. But I will say that Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3 kind of things, or Marvel 2, there emerge like the broken top tiers, and that's the way it is. But the fighting community has evolved, and the expectations now are that you have a game that's more balanced. Balance is a much bigger deal today than it was back in the day. That adaptation is not as much of a thing as complain and change things because you can, And so I do think that even though it wasn't the way it was back in the day, with where we're at now, with expectations from the community now, it does need to be addressed. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think we're going to close this out and as part 1. And then we will talk a little bit about what's going on with the CFN beta. I would say beta, but since a lot of our viewers and you two are American, I'm going to say beta. And then also the balance patch. I think we can have a little chat about that. So, alright guys, this is the end of part 1.